Hi folks, this is Andrew Rowland, the designer of Napoleons Imperium, and I wanted to give you a quick snapshot of the setup of the game, so you can see how the counters look and how everything is laid out on the map at the beginning of the game. So I have literally laid this map down on the floor so I can stand up on a little bit of a ladder and get a bird's eye view to show you how the counters are all laid out with each nation. So I'm going to zoom in and we're going to have a little chat about the whole map here as it is. So the first thing I wanted to say to you is that there are plenty of counters. There are 760 counters that you can lay onto this map. There'll be plenty. So what I've done firstly is I've done the initial setup. So that is put everything as per the rules in the initial setup of the game. Now what you'll notice, this is not only the initial setup, but it is also with the first purchase. So here let's have a look at the French. So I've put all the counters out firstly, and we'll have a fine look at them in a moment. And I've placed the first year's purchase. So there's all the counters, but I want to show you how many counters there are, because this is the spare counters that aren't laid on the map. So as you can see, it runs a fair way up the table for all the spare counters. Now you will use a lot of those counters because, particularly as you see all the flags, they get laid out on each territory, and as you take a territory you have to actually put out one of these counter flags onto the map. And as you lose a territory, the opposing nation, the enemy nation, actually takes that enemy flag, that's your flag, and they use that towards battle points at the end of the game. So you do actually need quite a few counters, but there are plenty. So let's take a real close-up look at the counters on the map. Now note this map has perspex over a sheet of perspex, which I believe is the standard in the States for going over the wall maps. And it does look quite good, though it does add a little bit of reflection when filming, so be aware of that. But let's have a look at the counters in close-up, and you'll see that they're actually quite a thick counter. And I really do love that about these. They are a very nice looking counter. So let's just go back to one of the Spanish in front. Now let's see if I can focus on that. It is quite a nice thickness. It feels really nice in the hand. I'm debating whether I do a clipping of this. If I do, it'll be just a 2mm because they are very tight registration around the edges, as you'll see the numbers. So I don't want to clip too far in when I do, but I might even do a 2mm clipping around them. We'll see how that goes anyway. But they're fine just as they are, and they're very easy to pick up, which I really enjoy, because nothing worse than trying to get your nails under a counter. Okay, so you'll see there's different ways that you can set up, and I will go into the tactics there, but let's go one by one. There's the British all set up. Now the British are also down here in Portugal, and they're also up in Hanover at the top. Up at the top we've got the Nordic nations. Now they're made up of Denmark, Norway and Sweden. Now they're combined together, that although they were at different times even at war at each other, and there were certainly some tensions between those nations, I do take care of all of that in the battle cards. So the battle cards take care of all those little diplomatic issues between nations. So let's have a look at the Russians, which I've laid out a little bit different, and I will talk a little bit about that, because they have this large, expansive territory at the side of the map. We'll go down, similar with the Ottomans. So the Ottomans have quite a large, expansive area as well, so they can be laid out a little bit different than just the straight stacks. Though I do enjoy the stacks in that they add a bit of a fog of war effect. And you can also put on top of the stacks the ones that you want to look a little bit more intimidating to your opponent. So for instance, everything with an orange border like this represents 2 units. So it's not 1 unit, it is 2 units. Everything with a blue border, so if I go down to one of the purchases of Austria, that represents 5 units. So we'll go back to the map and we'll look at Austria, who are right there in the center. They actually have 7 territories, and each territory is represented by a number which is on the territory, but also a flag. There is 1 flag in every territory. So they're quite crammed in the center, and that is really a hot spot of the game between Austria here and also Prussia right in the center. So they're in a similar type scenario, slammed right in the middle of the map, and certainly some hot warfare takes place right there. So here's the French, the very powerful French. Their units are very powerful. Particularly land units, they have bonuses on their attack. They have a bonus on their movement as well. So there's Napoleon sitting right there in France, in the capital territory. We move down here to Spain, and Spain play a different type of role. Firstly, they have this Spanish ulcer of the English that is sitting right here, and that is also quite a crucial tactic of the British, what they're actually going to do down here with this little area. So you have quite an expansive, it looks fabulous with all the counters on the table and all of their fine stacks, the way that you'd like to set it up. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. If we take a look at the rule book, on page 7 of the rule book, you'll have your commencing incomes. These are the incomes that each nation commences with. Now around the map you'll see that very circular, it's economy line with all the numbers on. And if you look down onto the economy line, each nation has a number from 1 and going right up to 30. And they have 2 economy counters. So there is a secondary counter that they can add. So once they get past the 30 amount, or they can start to count further up. So you'll continue up the line 15, 16, 17, 18, right up to get past, and then you'll put the second counter, which begins 31, 32, 33, and so on. So that is why there are 2 economy counters. So each alliance has one of these territory charts, which basically tells you how to lay all the counters out on the sheet. So you'll see the British, it goes through the infantry, the riflemen, because the British have riflemen, the special unit, cavalry, artillery, and ports, where the fleets are all located. That's the initial setup, and it will go through each of them. The French are exactly the same in their alliance. But on the back of this card, it's just a rules in brief. 1 sentence to represent every rule, so it's a quick reference. And also you see the special abilities of all the nations. But bear in mind, you can also see them on the counters. So as we flip over to here and we look at one of these French counters, you'll see all their abilities. The A is for attack, the D is for defense, and the M for movement, and you see their abilities. So when you're looking at the table and at the map, you actually then notice all the different abilities for all the different nations at a glance. At one stage we were looking at a very simple counter with just the numerical value on the counter, but we decided to continue with all of the unit values, which allowed you to see at a glance how powerful the different nations were. So it would take one person between 40 minutes to an hour to set up, though a number of people online have already said that they've set it up in much less time than that. I'm a very stickler for the way everything looks, so I would probably take the longer amount of time to set up, because I do like things to look good when they start up, and I have, little idiosyncrasies that I like to see as far as how the units present on the board. If you've got a number of players, obviously this will be fast-tracked, your setup. If you've got, say, 4 players, for instance, it'll be very quick, probably be set up in 15 to 20 minutes. You could probably do that. Now, there are different ways you can set up the counters. There are the one stack, that is all the counters in one stack, and that's probably very beneficial in the center of the board with Prussia and Austria, because there's not a lot of territory space. Even though we elongated the map to allow for more space in the center, there's still not a lot of space, and without actually taking the map into something that is not identifiable as Europe, we had to stay with that. So if you're setting up in the middle of the map, it's probably better to stay with a single stack. However, if you're like the Ottoman or Russians, you can afford to actually move your stacks into infantry, cavalry, and artillery, like this. That gives you more visibility of what's in the stack. Now remember, with no border, it's a single unit. With an orange border, it's a double unit. And with a blue border, which there are none on the map as of yet, but in the purchase tray, that represents 5 units. Now with this game, there is actually a bit of strategy in the way that you set up your counters. For instance, if I am France, I would want to reflect that I'm very strong with artillery on my ports, because it's my ports that are vulnerable for invasion or attack by the English, but particularly the English fleets. So I want to represent that I am very strong on my ports that are facing England. However, in the south of France, you'll see that I have some cavalry, and the cavalry are sitting there waiting, reminding me that they move to, and I can quickly move them through the territories to wherever I want on the field, responding to wherever I want to attack or maneuver. So it's just a reminder of me. I've got nothing that is threatening down there, so I'm not going to reflect that I'm really strong with artillery. It's just a reminder to self. Equally, the Spanish are vulnerable ports, so they're going to probably want to reflect that they're strong in that way. And here is another strategy. This is the Austrians. Now, Austrian have very fine infantry. They're actually, one of their abilities is that they cost very little to produce, and they're strong in defense. So, however, if I'm wanting someone to attack me, I would probably represent myself as weak as possible. So here is in Bavaria, or Baden, I'm just putting a single infantry on top, deceiving what I have below, because I actually want someone to maybe come in and attack me and maybe overwhelm them with what I have, or bring in a counter attack from Austria. So you can do that. You can make yourself large or small, depending on the way that you reflect the units that you have. And you can use geographically where you actually locate them. So if you're, for instance, not wanting to threaten down here in Anatolia, you could push your units, which are in Crimean, right back to the edge to deceive that you're not a threat on this border. There are all sorts of mind games that you can play with the counters, so I encourage you, play those mind games. Don't make it easy for your opponents to know what you're doing. If you want to disguise what you have, do a fog of war type of situation where you've got all of the units stacked up. bear in mind that they can question what is there, and the orange borders do give it away a little bit, but it's just what you want to reflect. Just some last comments. There is a major commander. A major commander starts in every capital. That's where your major commander commences the game. So if you go around to every capital, you'll see a major commander sitting there. And a major commander adds bonuses. So if you look at the Ottoman, they had a +1 in attack, +1 in defense, or a +1 in movement. They can only be applied to one unit per battle, so that is one type of unit, so either infantry, cavalry, or artillery, or they can be applied to a fleet as well. If they're used in the movement, providing they haven't taken part in the attack phase, they can be used in the movement to actually stretch the movement of the nation. So they can reach, so for instance, if a movement value of the Ottomans, and we look at our movement, can move 4 territories, with a commander attached, it'll move 5 territories. Now the commanders in the rules, they will not die if they're captured. They will be imprisoned or paroled on a dice roll, but every nation has also minor commanders. You can only get a minor commander if you take an enemy's capital. So you take an enemy's capital, part of the reward is you'll get a minor commander who will also start from your own capital, but immediately will be placed out on taking that capital. That's a reward. You'll see we also have spies in the special rules. They're the only counter that is different on the reverse side. You actually have a figure, so you can turn it either way that you like to try to disguise where your spy is. So had I started again today, I probably would have put different numerical numbers on the back of the counters. I didn't know that at the time of production, but I certainly know that now, and good things are coming. In relation to your spies, the spies always, when you're playing this optional rule, will start from your capital. Now, all the spies have a different figure on the back of them, which is a nice little touch, so they can melt into the population without being seen. Look at this chap with his walking stick there. Rather debonair chap. And same with the French. We've got a bit of a town crier for the English. And nice. There's a couple of 3 ladies figures that can blend in as spies. They were often female spy figures. And again for the Russians. So they have different figures. They have to start from the capital. They have to move all the way to an enemy capital, so of their choosing. Then they have to roll a 1 on a dice to actually win one of the technologies or special abilities from that nation. And they have to make it all the way back without being discovered to their capital before that technology can be used for your nation. So each time that the opposing nation has a spy in their borders, they're entitled to, once a turn, roll for discovery. Again, they have to roll a 1 on a 10-sided dice in order to discover the spy. But if they do, they will win a battle point card. And the battle point card is a spy's death. Here, they'll get 20 battle points. It's very hard to do. It has been done. And it's also very hard to discover a technology, but I just heard recently that the spy from the Ottoman territory managed to go all the way up through Russia. This is in a game just recently in the United States. Made it through to Moscow, discovered the technology, and came all the way back, all the way through all the territories, successfully to Istanbul, and was able to enact the new technology for the Ottoman team. So that's it, folks. That's a little bit about the counters and the game setup. That's the way it all starts. It doesn't go into the gameplay yet, but I just wanted you to see what all the counters look like, their thickness, what they mean, and it gives you a good idea for the setup of the game. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this helps everyone. Thank you.